Good morning, and welcome all of you, specifically the students who are entering in the class of 2014. We've been preparing for this day for a long time, and we're really excited to have you here. Also, welcome to your faculty. Your faculty will be working with you over the next number of years to enhance your education and your experience at UNLV. And you'll be developing a strong bond with the faculty here, and so we're really proud to see such a tremendous faculty turnout. My name is Dr. Carl Reiber. I'm the Vice Provost for Academic Affairs here at UNLV, and I'm a professor in life sciences. I want to tell you a little bit about the purpose of UNLV Creates and its brief history, but significant history. UNLV Creates was designed specifically to bring together our incoming class and expose you, our new students, to the scholarship, creativity, inspiration, and discovery of a university. And we do this today, but we do it every day that you're here. Today you're going to hear a number of our best faculty, and the faculty are going to expose you to what they do, why they do it, and why they're so passionate about it. Because you, as incoming students, will be exposed to this type of scholarship and the creation of new knowledge. And we hope that you'll catch fire and be engaged in this type of work as you move forward. It's why you've come to a university, a research university. Today, we have all of the academic colleges represented. And I would like to give special thanks to the deans who led the processional for their college. And so I'm going to start with the Dean of the Lee School of Business, Brent Hathaway. Can you stand and be recognized? Kim Metcalf, the Dean of the College of Education. Stowe Shoemaker, the Dean of the Hotel Administration. Tim Porter, Dean of the College of Sciences. Dean Rama Venkat, Dean of Engineering. Dean Marna Miena, the Dean of the Honors College. Dean Patty Iannuzzi, Dean of Libraries. Dean Kate Corrigan, she's the Dean of the Graduate College. Dean Sean Gerstenberger, Health Sciences. Dean Chris Hudgens, Dean of Liberal Arts. Dean Helga Watkins, Associate Dean, Fine Arts. Dean Robert Ulmer, Dean of Urban Affairs. And Dean Ann McDonough, Dean of the Academic Success Center. Thank you all for coming. And students, these are the individuals that you will be working with, who set the standards and who move your college forward. And so these will be people that will be very important to your life. Now, as we move forward in this program, what we want to emphasize, one is the creativity of scholarship. But we also want to emphasize the fact that your graduation starts today. You're here today for a purpose, and that purpose is to complete your studies, graduate, and go on to gain gainful employment. And so you're going to take a pledge today, later on towards the end of the ceremony, where you pledge to finish your studies and graduate in 4 to 6 years. And you will be taking that pledge with your deans, with the faculty who will be helping you move forward in that goal. I'd like to say a little bit about our entering class of 2014. You're extraordinary in many, many ways. First, you belong to the largest entering freshman class UNLV has ever seen. There are approximately 3,850 of you starting as new freshmen, but almost 6,000 of you starting new at UNLV when you add in transfer students. That's extraordinary. You're joining a campus that has the 6th most diverse student body in the country, and we're proud of that. At a university, we value experience and diverse experiences. So while you're at UNLV, enjoy the diversity, embrace it. It's something that you will use for the rest of your career, the rest of your lives. We have students from 48 states and 3 territories and 74 countries. We have the largest group of valedictorians ever to come to UNLV and a significant number of national merit finalists. That's tremendous. The credentials of this incoming class are superb. I would say some of the best of any incoming class we've ever had. You should be proud of yourself starting today and as you move forward. Now, we have a special treat for you today in that when you came to new student orientation, you were given a book, Getting Your A Game On. And this is a book that provides you sage advice on how to make the transition from high school to the university. Study habits, best practices, how to engage your faculty, etc. I hope you've had a chance to at least thumb through it since you received the book at New Student Orientation. I would strongly suggest that you start reading it, because all of you are going to be taking a first-year seminar course where you will be reading it and putting the words of wisdom to good use over the next few years. But our treat this day is that we have the author of that book as a keynote speaker here at UNLV Creates. And so I want to just do a very brief introduction to the author before he comes up. So Getting Your A Game On is written by Ken Sufka. He's a very interesting individual. I met him last night for dinner. I can tell you he's passionate about education. He truly cares about the success of students that are in university settings. He brings with him tremendous academic credentials. He's a professor of psychology and pharmacology for the Research Institute of Pharmaceutical Studies at the University of Mississippi. He teaches general psychology and received numerous awards for outstanding teaching and research. He's been recognized by the American Psychological Association for his national efforts at undergraduate curricular reform and received the Iowa State University Department of Psychology Alumni Award for exceptional contributions to teaching. He's recently published yet another book called The A Game, 9 Steps to Better Grades. This book basically highlights worst practices, mistakes that students make that they shouldn't make. And so I would strongly recommend that you go out at some point in time over the next year, at least look for it in the library, but probably buy a copy of it and read to make sure that you don't make those mistakes as you move forward and focus on best practice. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Ken Sufka.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much. What a thrill it is to be here, an Ole Miss Reb among all of you rebels. I love it. I just feel right at home. So you had some summer reading to do. Okay, that one's on me. You can blame me for that one. But there was a reason why I wrote this book. I wrote this book because I encounter so many of my students, be it in my general psychology class, I teach 400 students a semester in that, or my brain science class, it's an upper division course, I teach about 100 of those a semester, that just seem to hit a wall, and they can't figure out what's going on. Well, the faculty here could probably tell you what's going on, because they've encountered the same thing too in their classes. And what seems to be the case is that that transition from high school teaching and learning doesn't necessarily map on all that well to college level teaching and learning. And there really truly are some interesting and fundamental differences. And so I wrote this book to help my students work through a diagnosis, to identify some of those common mistakes, and then to use the best practices that we know today in the business of teaching and learning that can help them get their A game on. Let's talk about those differences from high school, because I know that you all graduated at the top of your high school class, but there are some fundamental differences that are worth noting. So let's just take a look. What was your high school like versus what UNLV will be like? Well, what was the teacher like in high school? Well, the teacher mastered the content of a textbook. They were the ones that figured out what needed to be taught, and then you were to learn that. And the teacher assumed the student might be incapable of learning that on their own. Now in college, that works a little bit different. You see, we assume that you can learn on your own, and that the teacher's going to create some very interesting experiences, environments for your creativity and discovery to blossom on its own. Well, that's a big difference right there. In high school, how did you know what you had to do day in and day out? I suspect your high school teacher told you. And how did you prepare? Well, you just showed up with pencil and paper. Well, at a university, you're going to get a syllabus on the first day, and then it will detail all of the things that you're supposed to do, every reading, every assignment. You have to just do that on your own. And we expect that to have happened when the lecture starts. That's a huge difference. Because if you practice the old high school technique and then you are in the college classroom without that preparation, suddenly you will find yourself lost in class. But hey, that's an easy thing to fix. How do teachers teach in high school? The lecture method. And how do students learn? Well, pretty passively. You sort of absorb it like a sponge. You know, good students are maybe the sham wow and absorb more, possibly, I don't know. But in universities, it's a little bit different. Remember, universities are going to create these interesting learning opportunities for you. And you're going to be actively engaged in your own learning and education. And we design experiences that capitalize on that. What does it mean to study for an exam? Now, I bet some of you could show up to a high school exam without studying, correct? I see some, yeah, there you are, you're shaking your head. Oh yeah, I could do that. Or you studied the night before and you still got an A. Yes, indeed. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. You were probably tested pretty frequently, standardized tests in high school. College testing is just going to come at you quite a bit differently. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. And the preparation for that ought to be taking you days and weeks. And it's going to require you to think very differently about what it means to study and how to prepare for exams. In high school, grades, effort. If I worked hard, I should get good grades. In college, mastery of the course content, that's good grades. And I get that. Dr. Sufka, I showed up every day. I worked really hard. Yeah, but you didn't learn anything. I can't be giving those grades away. So another fundamental difference. What is the purpose of college? You know, universities are in the business of creating new knowledge and discoveries and innovation and sharing that. And you're going to be part of that process. The faculty here will engage you in their own innovation, discovery, and research as you progress through your undergraduate career. And you get to participate in that. Now, let me tell you about a student of mine and why I wrote this test, or why I wrote this book. You've seen these Scantrons before, haven't you? Here's a Scantron. Multiple choice test. Teach a lot of students I have to use multiple choice tests. But here's what I do. I like giving instant feedback. So here I always give a punched out Scantron of the key. So once you turn in the test, you can put it right over top and you can find out exactly how you performed on the test. I love doing that. It helps me diagnose problem areas. So here's this is an actual test from a student in my brain class, Psych 319. And of course the question is, well, why did you give me an F? I worked really hard and I studied very hard. And my quick answer to that is, you got 20% correct on that. Remember, grades are based on mastery of course material. Well, then this is followed up by another question then. And that question is, can you help me figure out what I'm doing wrong? And so in my 20 plus years of teaching, I have talked with hundreds, possibly thousands of students trying to diagnose problem areas. And that's summarized here. I've discovered all kinds of really silly mistakes that they make and how to get them back on the right track. Now, if any of you read this, some of you read it. How many of you read this? Raise your hands. Oh, excellent. Let's see which one wins. Health sciences? You didn't, come on. Okay, it looked like somebody over here, this college won. I'm going to do something that you're going to spot comes from chapter 6. So pay attention. And then I'm going to ask you if you know what I was trying to do here, okay? So I get to be a little detective when I interview students, and I get to find out, okay, let me just find out what you're doing. And I have discovered 3 problem areas. All of them can be fixed. The 3 problem areas are as follows. First up, problems in classroom engagement. Their poor grades are coming from them not taking care of business before stepping into the classroom. Classroom is a learning experience, and if you don't capitalize on certain things before stepping into that, that's going to be a problem. The second thing has to do with the mechanics of their studying, when they study, how much they study, how they study. Tons of blunders. I can fix that too. And then finally, I do find some problems involved in testing, and I'll get to those later. But these are the 3 sort of areas. Let's take a look at that first one on classroom engagement and ask the question, how do I get good grades? Well, I have found 4 areas that distinguish the very, very best of my students and those that are failing. And those things are whether they attend lectures. Now, and I mean you actually have to show up for the lecture. Getting a lecture notes from somebody does not count. The very best student always attending lectures. And if you do everything else there in these next 3 areas, you'll actually create a wonderful learning environment for you. Another thing has to do with sitting in the sweet spot. Now, you'd like to think you could sit anywhere and do well, but the truth of the matter is, the farther away you are from the sweet spot, the more distractions you're going to have. Us faculty would like to think we are rock stars and that everybody would be fighting over the front row. Truth is, everybody fights over the back row. Too many distractions, too many distractions. Lectures should be one where you have a Zen moment. What I mean by that is you become one with the lecture. Get that? Oh, I'm glad some people got that. So the joke of the day, what did the Buddhist monk say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. Oh, and then there's a follow-up to that. The Buddhist monk said, where's my change? And the hot dog vendor said, change comes from within. I love you, parents. Okay. Next up, what did you do in high school to prepare for a lecture? You showed up, maybe with a pencil and paper. In college, you will get a syllabus. You will find a remarkable difference in the quality of your lecture notes and your understanding of lecture if you just do the work before you show up. You have to do that. And finally, what else differentiates good students from poor students is you've got to avoid being the phantom student. You never ask a question when you're confused. You never show up to office hours. You never email me. These are things that are easy to fix. If you were paying attention to your first 4 chapters, these are your steps that start a successful academic career path. These things, if you do, will create the resources that you need to begin studying. If you don't do those things, you will have poorer resources to study and thus worse grades. Now, let's move on and talk about this other thing, the study skills. I tend to find 4 problem areas here during my interviews with students about how they prepare for class or how they prepare for exams. Let's take a look at them. The areas where I see trouble include, first off, their study sessions. In high school, you could generally get by studying the night before. Don't do that. Don't do that for college. Oftentimes, I hear students spending 6, 8, 10 hours the night or 2 nights before an exam, and I can tell you, the scientific evidence on working memory just tells you that's not going to work. You can clog up your working memory pretty quickly, and you need your working memory to get information into your long-term memory. And so the science just isn't on your side with all-nighters. You've got to avoid those things. If you ask students, what do you do when you study? In other words, what are your learning objectives? They'll say, well, I don't know, I'm highlighting, I'm rereading. I can just tell you, you should throw away your highlighters right now. The scientific evidence on highlighters tell us that the more you highlight, the lower your grades are. So just throw them out. It's going to ruin the highlighter industry, but they'll have to reinvent. Rereading. That actually doesn't work as well as you hope. Did any of you solve the penny trick? All of you failed the penny trick. That's what rereading is like, very superficial processing. Another interesting thing that I find that's problematic is students go through and study the definitions. In other words, they aren't learning at all levels. They only learn the factual stuff. But go ask any faculty member here and they'll say, well, that's great, but I'm also going to ask you questions on a test that are application type questions, and I'm even going to ask you hard ones, conceptual type questions. You know, where you might have a fact and a fact, maybe an example and example, and how these things are related or not related. We will test you on those things. If you only study at the factual level, that could be a problem. You may only get 50% correct. In chapter 8, I talk about my favorite strategy, self-testing. Those in the science of teaching and learning might know this as rehearsal learning. Self-testing is a technique where you yourself are ascertaining how much information you know and what you don't know. Because what you need to be doing, obviously, is studying what you don't know. You could be wasting valuable time studying stuff you already know. I can't give you a higher grade than 100% of the stuff you know. It's identifying the stuff you don't know. But we've also learned that this rehearsal learning is a unique type of learning that strengthens those existing memories. And in my A-game book, I kind of talk about these sorts of things that deal with developing learning objectives, learning at all levels, and how to engage in self-testing. If you haven't read this yet, and you're encountering difficulty with your classes, these are the things that you would find there. Now, what about that last issue, the testing issues? Yeah, occasionally I'll find some problems there. Oh, by the way, so do you all got this, this last little 4 boxes? That's chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, let's look at this last one now. The testing issues that I find problematic are students that are not mindful when they're taking their exams, and they make some coding errors. I've seen students go from A's to C's just because of a little mistake in coding. I'll fix those, but it tells you you need to be mindful of that. Or they misread a question, or they don't really know how to second guess. There's some tips in there for that. There's also something about managing test anxiety. The scientific evidence suggests that test anxiety for some people can actually lower their grades by a whole letter grade or 2, but there's a really simple 5-minute expressive writing technique that is fabulous in helping alleviate test anxiety. And I describe that in the book. By the way, what am I doing over here that relates to chapter 6? Anybody? Anybody? Chapter 6? Oh, I love you. It is a concept map. I made a concept map of my book for you. I thought that would be important to do since I like concept mapping so well. Now, of course you have to ask the question, do these things really work? Well, let me just tell you. How about a student from my brain class this summer? She was a good student in high school. She was okay student, freshman, sophomore classes. Now in my junior level brain class, took her first exam. I'm going to show you her exam. This is FERPA approved. That's for the faculty staff. No names. First test, 44%. That's an F in my class. Pretty much everybody's class, that's an F. And of course she approaches me, what am I doing wrong? She had not read my A game, but I went through and, using that as a rubric, went through and started diagnosing problems. Attended every class, sat in the front, and then everything else fell apart. Pre-lecture prep? No, never did that. Let's take a look at your notes. Looking at her notes, oh, I see you're getting about 75% of the content down. Do you have any confusion? Yeah. Well, at least you're here asking now for help, so I'll give you chapter 4, but then everything else, chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8, all of them violating all of the rules. So I worked with her. Second exam, not bad, 72%. Come back, you can do better than that. Started working on, again, developing better learning objectives, teaching her how to make concept maps, and that's oh so important self-testing, because she got 100% correct on 72% of my questions. If she knew which 72% of the material she should stop studying, she should be spending the rest of that time studying the rest of the material. Here was her third exam out of 5. She got her A game on in 3, 98%. So does this stuff work? Of course it works. I would read the A game. My rules for success look at learning as this cascade of experience. Put things in the right order. And the right order begins with being there and being prepared and interacting with the faculty to create a positive learning experience and an awesome set of notes. And then your mechanics of studying. Don't put in your calendar when your exam is. Put in your calendar 2 weeks before, I need to start studying for that. And then utilize those other things in chapter 6, 7, and 8 to get your A game on. I am delighted that you have this life preserver for your class, and I would really like to hear from you and your success as you work your way through UNLV and your college degree. Thank you very much. I'll see you at the barbecue.
Thank you, Dr. Sufka. I can tell you from the faculty point of view that his advice is fantastic. So if you follow that advice, you'll all do extremely well. I'm Dr. Steve Rowland. At last year's UNLV Creates, I was honored to be one of the faculty speakers. And it's my great honor this year to introduce the speakers that are listed in your program. These creative professors will briefly describe some of the research that has captured their passion. These 4 professors provide a tiny sample of the exciting research that is happening at UNLV. So please join me in welcoming our first faculty speaker, my colleague, Dr. Brian Hedlund.
Hey everybody, my name is Brian Hedlund. I'm a professor in microbiology in the School of Life Sciences. And I'm here to tell you how my microscope showed me the world. I need the slide advancer. Thank you. All right. So I heard we're ahead, so I think that's probably okay, right? So this is me, this little guy is me. When I was about 2 years old, there were probably frogs or crayfish in that bucket. I always loved biology. I played with these caterpillars when I was a kid, released them when I was older. I always begged my parents to go outside, play with biology, and be part of it. So of course, When I went to the University of Illinois when I was your age, also my big state university, I was going to study what? Biology, right? I always loved it, okay? When I was a sophomore, I started doing research on these microbes that make swamp gas, right? Methane, amazing. I continued my work during my graduate studies at the University of Washington. Again, microbiology. I studied these microbes, Placebo. They live in fresh water, in soil, discovered really interesting structures inside the cells. And I also studied microbes that eat oil. Yeah, some microbes love to eat oil, and these are some of the microbes that we studied over the years that were eating lots of oil. And these microbes, even if I'm not that famous, these microbes got really, really famous during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So it's been really nice to be involved in, studying these microbes, learning how they clean up when we make mistakes. So after Washington, I went to the University of Regensburg in Germany for a postdoctoral fellowship, studying microbes that live in almost boiling water, Yellowstone National Park, deep sea hydrothermal vents, viruses that infect microbes that live in those environments. And then I came to UNLV in 2003. Continued my research, studying all sorts of interesting things that microbes do, bringing in nitrogen out of the air to build themselves, studying microbes that clean pollutants from dry cleaning facilities, and even studying microbes on poker chips, believe it or not. I was in ESPN for that, believe it or not. It's crazy, right? I also learned to teach. I built my lab. I did a lot of work fundraising. And in 2005, I brought in about my first $1 million from the National Science Foundation. So once I got that money, I went out and recruited and was building my lab team. And you guys might be really surprised that my first superstars in my lab were all undergraduates, these people right here. These people really helped launch my research, make it strong at UNLV, and then I was able to hire some more advanced people. Now in my lab, I have about 20 people, really dynamic and fun group, really exciting. I work with a lot of other universities, and I study hot springs and geothermal systems all over the world, Yellowstone, China, and lots of other places. It's a lot of fun, okay? One thing that we are learning, studying life in these geothermal systems, is that microbes cycle the element nitrogen. So they eat things like ammonia that we're used to thinking about as a cleaner, or nitrite, other salts. And this wasn't really appreciated that much in geothermal systems. So I was glad to be part of that research and my team studying how nitrogen was passing from one microbe to the other. And in 2010, I brought in quite a lot more money for fundraising, about $1 million from NASA and almost $4 million from the National Science Foundation. And that money from the National Science Foundation was to have a collaborative project with 6 other universities in the US and 6 in China. And so that got us a lot of attention. I was in Las Vegas Weekly, and some pretty interesting stuff. My students have also been in the news. So here are my students being featured in the RJ. I've sent a lot of students, about 30 students to China, 30 undergraduates. Here are some of my students that have spent whole summers doing microbiology research in China. Pretty crazy. I had a lot of fun during these trips, and so did my students and lots of other people. This is really how I got to see the world. Here I am in China. I'm going to Russia in a couple of weeks. I really get to see the world because I love microbiology. And I go around and I talk about microbiology and I dream about microbiology. And this is how I get to see the world. It's really fun. Of course, it's not all seeing the world because I spent a lot of time looking through my microscope. And a lot of the work we've done lately is single cell genomics. So we actually use an infrared laser. It's a heat laser. And we can grab single cells with that laser and move them away from their friends. And once they're separated, we can break the cells open and amplify their genome, their DNA, and then sequence their genome. And this allows us to predict what they do, study their evolution. It's been really exciting, and this has been picked up in the news on BBC, PBS, and other places, with me and my students and my collaborators being featured. It's been really, really fun. We also grow microbes in the lab. So some of those that are hard to study otherwise, we study with that laser and use their genomics. We also grow some of them. So these are some of the new microbes that we've described in the last couple of years at UNLV. New classes, new orders of microbes. Really, really cool stuff. I've also started to work with my collaborator in chemistry, Ernesto Abel-Santos, on microbes that take over when humans take antibiotics. Okay, you guys all know if you take antibiotics, you might have some problems, right? And that's because your friendly microbes are being beaten back by the antibiotics and some bad guys take over. And so we're interested in studying chemical, drugs that actually can hold back these harmful microbes as you recover from antibiotics. It's cool stuff, really fun. All right, so that's a little bit about how my microscope has allowed me to study microbes, which I love, but also allowed me to see the whole world and work with lots and lots of people. So, a little bit of, a couple ideas about what I think made me successful and what I want you guys to think about. Number one, in addition to the things you've already heard, I want you to simplify your lives. I pay attention to really only 3 things in my life: my health, all right, a few close supportive relationships, and my thing. For me, my thing is microbiology. You guys need to find what your thing is and go out there and live your thing and be impactful at your thing. You need to figure it out, okay? Also, I want you to remember that being successful is more fun than being unsuccessful. So go out and be successful, and you can be successful at UNLV, so go out and do it.
Great job. Good morning. No. Good morning. All right, that's a little bit better. My name is Janet Dufek, and I'm a professor of kinesiology and nutrition sciences in the School of Allied Health Sciences. All right, so I have a question for everyone this morning. What do you want to be when you grow up? Have you ever heard that question before? Has anybody ever asked you that question? Maybe your parents, relative, friend. Maybe when you were kids, you'd play make-believe or something like that. Who would you say you'd want to be? Well, hey, I want to be Bill Gates, or I want to be Beyonce, or I want to be Peyton Manning. It was kind of fun, kind of an easy question for you to answer at that time, wasn't it? But now, if I ask you that very same question today, that might be a little bit harder question to answer. So, I'm going to suggest that you're making some steps as you become a rebel today in answering that question. You're selecting coursework. That's going to influence this question. The circle of friends that you hang with, the things that you choose to do or not to do during your free time. All of these things are shaping your college experience and helping you to answer that question. One of the things that you're doing along those lines, and some of you have already seemed to have made this decision, is choosing a major. You're sitting along in these various areas where you've made that decision. Some of you over here, explorers, you're still waiting to check that box. That's okay. That's okay. This thing about choosing a major, it's kind of a dynamic thing. It's an elusive thing. As you ask questions, you might have different responses. So it's okay to change your major as you go on and try to figure out what it is you want to do. Now I'm going to suggest something else that might be able to help guide you. Think about what it is you're truly passionate about. What is it that excites you, that gives you enthusiasm? Ask it this way. What floats your boat? What floats your boat? Now, when I was a kid, I liked to play. That's it. I like to be outside. I like to run around. I like to jump. I like to, hang out with my friends. I like to play games. And you know what? When I became a young adult, about your age, that point in my career, my likes didn't change very much. I still like to play. So what is it that I'm going to do now? What can I do as a young adult, making a career decision to allow myself to be able to, in fact, contribute to society? I didn't find an easy answer to that question. So as I went on in college, like some of you here today. I was a first-gen college student. No one in my family had gone to college, so I didn't have much of a roadmap. I didn't have a good role model. If I'd asked questions to the people who knew me the best, the answers may not have been so appropriate. So yep, I took some wrong turns. But those wrong turns ended up basically just being detours. Because eventually I learned, and I will admit, it took me kind of later in my academic career, kind of like toward graduate school, where I finally figured it out. I figured out that I could take what I like to do, sport, movement, exercise, and I could combine that with an academic discipline, kinesiology, which is a study of human movement, and along with some principles of engineering, I could become what I am today, a biomechanist. So now, on a daily basis, I can go to work and I can do the things that I like to do. I get to evaluate, measure, test people doing things, moving, jumping, running, sometimes athletes, sometimes rehabilitation settings, sometimes ergonomics, human factors, workplace design. So on a daily basis, what I get to do when I go to work is something that I enjoy. Now, it is, in fact, sometimes challenging, often changing, and also fun. And you know what? I get paid to do this stuff. So my challenge to you today is to figure out what you are passionate about. Embrace that and follow your dream so that you, in fact, can do what it is you want to do and be a success. Now, you may not be the next Beyonce. You may not have the vocal chops to do that, but perhaps by your Rebel experience, you will be armed with a toolbox that will allow you to perhaps set stages or market the tour, or be the individual that works with the artist to rehab their body after a grueling tour. So again, I challenge you, find your passion, live your dream, be a rebel, and take advantage of this opportunity. Thank you very much. Have a great semester.
Great job. Morning. I won't make you say it again. So my name is Andreas Stefik. I'm going to talk to you today about what I call reimagining inventing. This is sort of the research that I've been doing for a few years on blind children and how it gave us some insight into what I'm calling the foundation of modern technology. You'll see why. So a few years ago, it turned out to be the case that in the United States, there was no mechanism whereby a child that is born blind or that is blind could participate in software design in the United States. Might sound a little bit weird that that was the case, but in fact, in almost every school in the nation, there was no way that a blind kid could learn how to code, basically. So we thought, why don't we try to fix that? But if we do, how exactly would a blind person learn to write software? This is kind of a hard question because modern software is usually designed using what are called development environments. So here's an example of one. This one's NetBeans. It's what you might use to build something on a Windows box or like your Macintosh. Here's another one called Xcode. This is how you'd build that cool iPhone game, right? But the catch is, for younger children, it gets even more visual. So for example, here's a tool by Carnegie Mellon that would not be useful for the blind because it's an animation toolkit. Here's another one called Unity 3D that I've had many students build little video games with, also very visual. But what's weird, it turns out to be the case that most of the time when you're inventing things, you're not using these fancy visual tools, you're actually using what's called a programming language. But if you're blind, the question is, how does the design of the language impact you? Can you even do that? What do you do? So the first thing we found when we did this is we found out that programming languages are actually much harder to understand using audio. So here's an example. There's some code in the middle of this slide, if you can see it. And if you translate into audio what that says, it's going to sound kind of like this. For int I equals 0, semicolon, I less than 10, semicolon, I plus plus, right paren, left brace. But if you're blind, usually use tools that speed this up a lot because it would get very tedious otherwise. So it'd sound a little bit more like this. For int I equals 0, semicolon, I less than 10, semicolon, I plus plus, right paren, left brace. But in fact, usually it's 2 to 3 times faster than that. So we thought, well, let's just do the easiest thing we can think of. Let's get rid of all those weird little symbols that are in the language. Let's get rid of the esotericness. Let's make it more terse. And we ran some statistical analysis and won some awards for doing this work. But eventually we had this sort of insight, and that was, now hold on just a second. Practically every device that's in every pocket in this room is built using programming languages, every single one of them. So is this actually just an issue with blind people having this hard to use? Or is this relate to what every product people use? So we did the same thing. We went around and we asked people, hey, does this programming language make any sense? And our little kitten here said basically, no, I have no idea what the heck this programming language means. And one reporter even got this and he said, programming languages are so bad, they're not even in Greek. They're more akin to Klingon. So that's great. We ran some surveys and they said programming languages are hard to use. Any of the computer scientists in the audience will probably find this soon. But that doesn't really tell us whether or not they are actually hard to use. That's just a survey. So we thought, maybe we can work on this, but that's scary because this problem of what's easy is so well known in computer science. We actually have a name for it. We call it the programming language wars. Sort of a weird term. So we said, okay, let's just do the simplest thing we can think of. We took our language, which we called Quorum, and we compared it to one called Perl, and then we had my grad student in the lab just sit around and roll dice. And they rolled dice to come up with a really terrible language where we designed the programming language randomly, just random symbols, random words, really terrible language. And we thought that would be funny, but it turns out that in fact Perl, designed originally by the NSA, or people working for the NSA, the language was so bad that people using it could use it no better than a language designed randomly by my grad student. We thought this was hilarious, and so we decided we'd better actually check the result to make sure it's really true. So we ran it again, and it turned out that was accurate to within 0.3% accuracy, so we're probably right. So here's the thing. When you come to a university, one of the best things that you can do is start working on a project. Sometimes it might be esoteric, sometimes it might seem like it's just trying to do a social good. But sometimes in science, you can gather insight from unlikely places. In our case, working with blind individuals sort of made us rethink a technology that is the foundation of every device you own. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Eric Weber. I am the director, or actually coordinator. Forgive me, my director told me not to use that term. Coordinator of the Design Build Studio at the School of Architecture. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about designing and building your future. When like one of our previous speakers, I was a first-generation college student too. My father was military, and so as a kid, we moved around a lot. While always being the new kid made it sometimes hard to make friends, it also gave me a unique perspective. By seeing things with new eyes, I often saw things that locals didn't notice in their everyday life. So what that taught me was that developing your own perspective, your own sort of take on things was really important. Perhaps the most memorable thing that happened to me during that time was when my father was sent to Spain. We saw Roman ruins, great medieval streets and things like that. It was really wonderful. One of the things that really was memorable to me was I was walking on my way to the market one day, and I started hearing these bells ringing. I walked down the street, I saw this church. It was interesting. I walked right down the street, saw this church, and it just hit me. I decided right then and there I wanted to be an architect. Don't ask me where that came from, because there were no architects in my family, and I had no idea how to make that happen. As it happens, it took another 25 years. I was only 12 years old at the time. Well, most people don't generally figure out what they're going to do in their lives that early. Having said that, though, what I went through, and I think what most of you will go through, is very similar. You have to decide what it is that you are interested in doing, and then develop a game plan for making that happen. I call this designing and building your future, which, as it happens, is exactly what I do. So it worked out kind of nicely. What we did in my program was create a new design build program. What I see what we do there as is an incredible opportunity for students to learn how to think for themselves. I think of college, your primary purpose in college is as learning how to think for yourself. The first speaker today talked a little bit about this, and I think it's really essential. That's the one skill that you should learn while you're here. To learn nothing else, that thing will give you the tools to do everything else. So that's why I talk about it as being such a fundamental thing. In the design build studio, my students literally develop a way of seeing the world and their place in it, and then they actually create that reality. It's an incredible opportunity. Our first exercise at the university was to lead the university's participation in the US Department of Energy's Solar Decathlon 2013, which is an interdisciplinary, university-based competition to design and build solar-powered housing prototypes. So we're designing a house that has to run entirely on solar power, which is a great opportunity. We're talking about sustainable future, developing new technologies and things like that. This leadership role was only one part. We were only one part of a multidisciplinary team. We had students from engineering, faculty, from multiple departments, including journalism, economics, business, many other things. So it was a great opportunity for us to work across campus, because what you find is that no one does it alone. I'm going to walk through a few slides of that so you can see what we did. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about today was that your purpose here in school, like I said, is about learning to develop your own path, your own future, okay? What I tell students is to look for the things in life that make you really excited, the things that make you go, wow, that's really interesting. An example from my own academic career, I think, is instructive. When I was in graduate school, I was tasked with developing a subject for my thesis. I didn't really know what I was going to do, so I took a fairly obvious route for an architect. I proposed doing a house and then wrote about what I thought that would mean to me. My thesis advisor, a very smart person, took a look at that and said, yes, that could be a cool project, very interesting project, but she challenged me in a very particular way. She said, why don't you go home over the weekend and write about something that's very personal and meaningful to me. Not something architectural, but something meaningful. So I did what she told me to do. I took her up on that subject. And I'm so glad I did, because what I wrote about was not something I ever would have thought about otherwise. And it ended up being the best piece of work that I did in college. It was so good, in fact, that I put that piece of writing on the front of my thesis document. It won a thesis prize award, which was really exciting to me, as somebody who hadn't won anything before, but that was really fun. And what we ended up doing with that is it ended up setting the course for my future career. And in fact, when I interviewed after college at firms, the best firm the best architecture firm in Phoenix offered me a job because of that piece of writing. So listen to your creative writing and your English folks, because believe me, writing does help. It got me my job, and it led to the career that I followed, and it's why I'm here today. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you guys is follow the wow, whatever it might be. If you do that, you'll be very successful here. You'll be happier, and it'll lead to wonderful things. So thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, UNLV students, it's time to grab your Rebel honor cords and put them on.
If you don't have one, we'll make sure you get one.
So please rise, students, and ensure that your Rebel honor cord is proudly displayed. And as we prepare to take the academic pledge together, I want to frame the experience. So over time, taking a pledge is referred to a type of binding, something to do, something to give, or something to refrain from doing. We know there's powerment and there's empowerment that comes through stating something together. UNLV faculty and administrators, please join in with students as they pledge to the successful graduation from UNLV. At this point, I'm going to ask Valerie Burke, the university's organizer of UNLV Creates, to lead you in the graduation pledge. So Valerie, are you ready?
Yes. All right, so everybody, please take out your programs as well. On the back of the program, you'll see your pledge. How this will work is I will say each line, and you'll repeat after me. And hey, Reb's here to help us, and he's got his honor cord on, so we're all ready to go. So here we go. As a student of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
As a student of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
I commit to maximizing my experience as a rebel. I will stay actively engaged with my classes. Seek out transformative knowledge. Make space for intellectual flexibility. And get deeply involved with campus life. I pledge to work hard and play hard. Support my fellow rebels. Complete my degree. And bleed scarlet and gray. Go Rebels!
All right, we're almost finished. We're almost ready to turn you loose on campus. We just have a couple more formalities to go. First of all, I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of all of you, the entering class of 2014, for showing up and listening to our exciting speakers. I think you get a sense of just 4 of our faculty and their excitement and dedication to their scholarship. And we have 900 plus faculty here at UNLV that have that same vibrant perspective on their scholarship and education. And they are going to take you by the hand over the next number of years to transform you and lead you and guide you in your intellectual development. So please thank Dr. Sufka for his inspiring words and the 4 speakers. Also, please thank the faculty who took the time to come out and show their commitment and dedication to you as our incoming class. And also to those that helped organize this. They've been working for a long time to set this event up and make sure it went off as flawlessly as possible. So thank all those that helped out. You are now officially UNLV Rebels. And yes. And we are standing on a really, really significant stage here. This is where the Runnin' Rebels play. And as rebels, I expect to see all of you out supporting our basketball team and our football team. It's a lot of fun. They're good. They're getting better every year. And as part of being a UNLV rebel, I want you to engage in a time-old event that is just a lot of fun. And that is, I want to introduce the Rebel Band, and they're going to come in and they're going to play the UNLV fight song. And I want you to sing along. So Rebel Band, they're waiting out in the hallway. Okay, you are truly now formally UNLV rebels, and if you did that right, your hands hurt. All right, we will now bring out Professor Reiner Spencer, who will lead the recessional of the faculty and the students out of the Thomas and Mack Center.